The Survival Guide to Life.
Hey everyone, how's it going? We got another episode of the Survival Guide to Life. And this week we have a very special guest. Her name is Cortnay Malcom. And for those of you who are not too familiar with her, just really quick, she'll give a brief introduction on who she is and what she does.
Awesome. Thanks so much for having me today. A little bit about me. I am currently a life coach. I've been working towards that since 2019. And there's a lot of experiences that kind of brought me to this place. I had my undergrad in Bachelor of Science in Human Nutrition, as well as my education degree, and have some experience teaching for a few years. I also coach rugby at the high school and university level for women's sport, which is really great. And I spend a lot of my time usually creating. I like to do a lot of personal growth and continue to develop my intuition and mindfulness and hope to help others do the same.
Would you say that, like, when you were younger, you wanted to, or you had like a desire to help others, and like maybe it could have been like teaching, or it could have been something else, but then
I'm sorry, I can barely hear you. I don't know if it's just me on my end or... Oh, there, that's better.
That's better. Okay, sorry about that.
Yeah, that's all right.
So no, my question was, being a life coach, was this something that you wanted to pursue at a younger age, or did it just happen like later on in life?
It just kind of happened like serendipity. It was one of those things. I was really searching for what I wanted to do next. And I had like left my previous career teaching because of ongoing mental health issues. And during that process and that time that I took off and away from work to kind of get myself to a healthier state, that's when I really discovered the usefulness of counseling and psychology, and life coaching is kind of just a different realm of that. And I really kind of fell in love with the practices and the methods that are used, because it's basically just helping other people understand themselves better. And if you understand yourself better, you have more power. And I just, once I discovered that I could do that, and how helpful it was in my own experience, I thought, this is something that's very beneficial and proactive especially for people that are struggling with mental health, because it doesn't wait until you're at rock bottom. There's lots of ways that you can help prevent and keep yourself in a healthy state of mind before getting to a point of, burnout, or, where your illness is interrupting your daily life. And everything you usually love to do. So I like to kind of think that life coaching is a way to kind of supercharge your recovery, or to kind of help you live a more fulfilling life and be more satisfied with your life and the opportunities and possibilities that are there.
Yeah, and then I think that sometimes it's most beneficial to actually have a life coach, as in have someone there who's sort of like keeping you on track, because it's one thing when we tell ourselves, or we try to go down or dabble in self-mastery, or just try to like perfect ourselves, but then when we actually have someone there who's sort of like keeping track, or pushing us, it's more of a realistic thing, and we sort of don't really lie to ourselves, and then we sort of get that extra like push and extra energy. So from your own perspective, as before you got into life coaching and helping others, as in your own self, and how you sort of realized you have a own say, or you have like you can control in your recovery of your mental health. Like I feel like that topic or like this ability is not really spoken about, especially
Mhm.
in school. So during all these different trials and tribulations we face growing up, whatever they may be, you know, within family, friends, or relationships, they have a huge impact on our mental health. And the ability to pivot from that or to grow and have like a nourishing growth mindset or abundant mindset, it's really hard unless you're along the right people. So I really think it's cool that you're doing life coaching or you're trying to help people with this, because not much attention is drawn towards there, and it's not really looked at, and it's very important. So my question really is, what helped you stay on track and see it all the way through and like finish it and like actually become a life coach?
Oh, that's there's a lot of variables that kind of come into play. I'll start basically at like my own experience. You mentioned that in the beginning. Like when I began to like realize that like I could make a positive impact on my own recovery and not just relying on other people to help me through it. I think that was really pivotal, because I think that our society has kind of put like a big emphasis on any illness. It doesn't matter if it's mental, physical, cognitive. It's all based on, okay, how do we fix this problem? They see it as a problem that needs to be fixed. And the quickest way, because we're all really, really reliant on that instant gratification these days, is, you know, medication. So we quickly go to medication and then we try to fill in the blanks afterwards. I know why they do that, because in a lot of cases, you know, not knowing the severity, when you're dealing with mental health, especially when you don't know the severity, like you want to take a person away from danger as soon and as quickly as possible. And medication really does have a time and a place to do that, to, you know, like get yourself into some clarity. A really great way, I've heard it explained to me before by a psychologist, is medication helps turn the light on in a dark room. So it's not necessarily something that you need forever, you need all the time, but there is a situation in when, you know, if you're a danger to yourself or you're a danger to others, or, you know, you've reached a point that you really don't have the capacity and agency to help yourself, it's really important at that time. But it's not the only recovery method. And I think we rely on it too heavily and expect that, okay, if you're on medication, you should be better. And I think you know, this is about 10 years ago for me when I was going through that. And, you know, that was my expectation, because that was societal expectation that, you know, I would go on medication and I would be better. So originally it actually took me a lot longer, probably 5 years after originally seeking and getting treatment for anxiety and depression. And that was when I was in university. So I really wasn't self-aware. And I had lived my whole life up until, you know, being 20 years old, not knowing that I was dealing with anxiety this whole time. I just wasn't aware of it. We have this own little bubble experience of life that we think there's a time where everyone kind of thinks, oh, what I'm experiencing, other people are experiencing too. And there's like a maturity that happens where you realize that, okay, it's not the same for me as it is for other people. And once you start to realize that, you're like, okay, how is everyone else walking around doing this thing and surviving and not like feeling the anguish that I feel? How is everyone keeping this face on, this mask on? And so I just assumed that everybody was dealing and feeling the way that I was, but we're just going through the motions anyway. It was just like what we were expected to do. And partially that comes from like, you know, like older ideals about mental health is like, you know, you keep it to yourself, you know, like don't bring anyone else down, don't be a burden, you keep it to yourself, you deal with it yourself, pick up your pants and stop whining about it and move on. And even though the awareness is here now, there's still a lot of understanding on the work that goes behind actually recovering from mental health and being in a place where like you continue to stay good. We've kind of focused a society of like getting you well and then being like, okay, now you're on your own. And usually that meant like, Kate, we get you on medication and now you're on your own. And what I think that I really would have benefited from is, at the time I had a really great counselor who basically acted as a life coach for me. And that's where I really started to see the power, because, I got medication. 5 years later, I was still struggling. And that's when I, felt like I had to leave my job to be able to just take care of myself. And that counselor, that person who kept me accountable, like you're saying, someone who keeps you accountable, who, who's questioning you and asking you to do a little bit of work on your own, just some some self-discovery, some personal awareness on how you're feeling and what that means for you. And sometimes it's so simple. For instance, like one of the first tasks she gave me was, like what do you do for self-care? And self-care, in the last 5 years has really blown up to be very important, and people understand and have a better awareness about it. But at the time, like when you are really struggling, it's kind of hard to know, okay, what is self-care? And she started asking me what the things that I do that were self-care, and my answers were so funny to her, but so it's funny to me now, because when I ask other people what their self-care is, they have the same answers as I did. And that's like cleaning, doing my to-do list. Some people really like taking baths because bath bombs are really great right now, but that still wasn't my jam. So I was listing off all of these things that were basically chores, things on my to-do list, things that needed organization. And she's like, no, those are not for you. Those are things that you have to do. What are things that you do for yourself when you want to relax or want to take some time off? And I had discovered that I had no idea how to do that. I had just, completely ignored that part of myself and didn't nurture it at all. So that's when I started really learning about nurturing myself and the relationship with myself that I had never had. And I think that that's what life coaches can really bring about. So after that experience, I was like, okay, what was missing for me in a lot of those experiences was being able to talk to somebody who was non-judgmental, who was there as a sounding board, had no relationship to me or any of the people I knew. So you don't have to walk on eggshells. Of course we have support systems that are close to us, our friends, our family, but for some reason we hold on to things away from them because we're scared of their judgment. Or we're just not ready. We want to have a little bit healthier relationship with ourselves before we start sharing that with other people. But I think that is what is so valuable about life coaching, and especially seeing people, like my biggest advocacy is, people who have mental health issues can do hard things. They've been doing hard things for their whole life, for a lot of the time. So teaching people that they can do it and they can recover and they can move forward, while like taking away the stigma that like, if you have mental health issues, you can't be successful, or you're more limited at being successful. Like, yes, there are more barriers, but personally, I would rather speak to somebody else, which is what I'm trying to hope to offer, who has experienced mental health issues, who is now a psychologist, who is now a life coach, who is now, in a profession where they're helping, but they also have personal experience in what they're helping with, and not just theory. Yeah. And I think that's the niche that I want to dig into, is, be able to relate to people and say, like, you're not just talking to somebody who has studied mental health. You're talking to someone
who's experienced it,
someone who has experienced it and understands, without you having to explain, what it's like to not be able to get out of bed in the morning. Like, that's a major thing with depression, and a lot of people experience that symptom, but we can't really explain it to other people. They just see it as laziness. And that's really hard to talk to someone else who's supposed to be helping you, and they don't understand that and how big a barrier that is for your daily life. So yeah, I know that's kind of a roundabout way of answering, but yeah, that's kind of why I'm so interested in life coaching, is because I experienced the power of, practicing positive psychology and how that can really change your relationship with yourself, and then, work outwardly from there.
No, that's you touched on like at least 5 or 10 really huge and important and really paramount topics. As in, first of all, I would say that you're right, in such a society that we're in right now, where there's a lack of authenticity within people, and we're going about every day with these masks on, and we have different masks for different situations or different scenarios, and whatever that may be or whatever it calls upon us, then we'll use that appropriate mask. Like, say, even if we were if we were, say, hopping on a train and just walking by, and I was like, oh, hey, how are you doing? The response would be like, hey, I'm fine, thank you. And but it's like so casual. It's not, there's really no meaning behind it, or
No,
you
you're
know
right. It's like almost an automated response. Like it's scripted.
yeah, right. It's like we're programmed to do this, and we just think this is how we're supposed to act and be. And then,
Yeah.
and then when you do look to get help, or certain people do try to get help, especially in mental health, then if you're talking to someone who's never experienced anything, and they're just like, hold on, trying to go back and look to the. So according to this, I think you're feeling like, and it's like, if you haven't been in my shoes, like, I don't know if I want to talk to you. And then you touched on something else that's like really key, because like now people like your friends and family, who's supposed to be your support system, are like supposed to be the ones around you who care about you, who actually do. But in the society we're in, which has programmed us, they're eventually, or if not right away, inadvertently, or even behind you, going to judge you. And then you don't really have anyone to talk to. So then you're just like, who am I supposed to go to?
Yeah. That's really what I think life coaching is so great for, especially because, through my own experience, I really experienced the healthcare system. And I mean, it's obviously going to be different for you in Chicago than it is for me in Nova Scotia, Canada. And even though things are free, it doesn't mean that they're quality. Even though you have insurance, it doesn't mean that you're going to get along with your psychologist or be a right fit. And I mean, like, just to, like, correct myself, like, I don't think that psychologists aren't important. I don't think that counselors aren't important. I think that everybody has a role. I just think the life coaching role is a lot more approachable. Like, I think with psychologists, where, like, traditionally you would go into an office, it would feel very clinical. You're talking to an expert, but really you're the expert on your life. The other person, no matter who it is or what their experience is or what their profession is, they're there to help you. And I think life coaching kind of just takes away one of those walls of barriers of, like, you can be at your own home. You can be sitting, like, just like we're doing now. We can connect like this, where you're in your comfortable space and I'm having to meet you at your comfortable space. Like, doesn't that make more sense to meet the person who's uncomfortable in their comfortable space, so that they can really dig a little bit deeper and get past the initial, like, programmed responses that we have. One of my favorite things that my counselor that I worked with did is she asked me every time I came in, how are you feeling? Like, how's it going? And, you just would be like, yeah, it's fine. Like, everything's good. And she's like, I know it's not. Tell me the truth. Like, what do you actually feel? And it took me a while to actually learn that I could answer that honestly. And that kind of brings me to my next point is, you're talking a lot about this, like, societal programming. And it's true. Like, we learn how to behave around other people by the time we're 5 years old. Like, we learn from our family members and our community what's appropriate and what's not appropriate. So if you learn by the age of 5, like, just an example, like toxic masculinity, like that you can't cry because you're a boy, that's going to stick with you for a long time. And you have to almost unlearn, like, deprogram yourself before you can reprogram. And really deprogramming in terms of, like, being to, like, build new habits. You're just unlearning habits that you've learned. And we can easily do that. And when you put it in that context, it's like, okay, I need to unlearn that I need to look a certain way when I leave the house. I need to unlearn that I can't like, show affection to my friend because they're the same sex. I need to unlearn that I don't deserve to be treated, disrespectfully. Like, everything that you learn, you kind of have to ask yourself, okay, why do I accept that behavior from other people? And that tells you a lot about your relationship with yourself, like what you think you deserve is what you're willing to accept. So you kind of have to learn to raise the bar for yourself. And, it changes a lot of relationships because, people who aren't used to having to meet that higher requirement, to be in your company, it can be painful because you kind of learn that, I don't know if I was getting very much from this relationship with this friend or acquaintance or this, workplace colleague. And when you start to draw boundaries with people, they're very resistant because they feel that they have a right to, do what they've always done. And like taking a step back is confusing, but I think it's really, really healthy and important to set boundaries around yourself and other people. And especially if it's affecting your daily life. Like a lot of people have issue, especially with like their work-life balance, because a lot of people are working from home now on a global scale more than ever. And because you're home, you don't really have that same workday feel where you leave the house, you go to work, you come home later, and then that is your time. You're kind of always at home and we're connected with devices. And a lot of people have felt like they're at the beck and call of their bosses, their jobs, their higher ups, because they're always in contact. So it's never like you have this off time to just kind of shut off, which is why, in countries such as France, like they passed a law, within the last few years that says you're not allowed to contact your employee outside of their hours, which I think is really great. But, yeah, it's great.
It depends, right? Really,
it depends. It depends on the work. Yeah, but I think that overall, that the society is saying, it's more of a big move for society to be like, listen, as a whole, we think that people's time outside of work should be precious and should be untouched and shouldn't be expected to contact you at all times. I think that it's more about the expectation than anything. Like if you're willing to go beyond and beyond, or beyond and above, that's on you. But I don't think it should be expected that you should be able to be in contact with your workplace until 9 p.m. Like that's your time.
You need it. If you don't have any time for yourself, as in like, then how really are you going to be that much of an asset or a benefit to your company? It's like that time where you can sort of recharge and rejuvenate, then you can
absolutely
do like the due diligence to each appropriate time. And especially when you were talking about like having, say, or like having like charge of one's own recovery. I was speaking to someone else, he started this company called Cope Notes, and they send you like text messages to help you like cope through whatever you're in. And,
cool.
Yeah, he actually gave a TED talk too. He's a pretty cool guy. He's actually in a metal band, so you would never think, like it just goes to show you don't judge a book by its cover. But then on another note, I spoke to this doctor. Her name's Dr. Michelle Gamble. I could send you her info, and you could
I would love that.
She's actually having all girls holistic night tonight through Zoom.
Cool.
Yeah,
that's so cool.
But basically, just to like bring awareness on like true health, and like the holistic way is actually truly more beneficial because it's not tainted with money and like big pharma, which, like you said, in certain scenarios it is beneficial, like depending on that person, but that's like a very small percent when you're using it in a large scale. And at how quick, and like especially say someone who's young and their brain's still developing, when you're introducing these chemicals and stuff, you're literally rewiring or reprogramming the way their brain works. And she was explaining this to me, and then I didn't understand that. And then even deeper than that, like when I just did my own research and I looked at even most of like in America, you see those like mass murders or things like that. All those people took SSRIs, and those are things like Prozac or things like that, antidepressants.
Mm-hmm.
So why are these things which are supposed to benefit someone and help with anxiety or depression causing people to do these things? That was my question.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's what's so amazing about. I mean, the program that I took. There's a lot of different programs, but I'm a huge proponent of understanding all of these things through science. In addition to like understanding, just like being alone with yourself and being aware of the things that are going on. But I love being able to explain that from a neuroscience perspective. So the neuroscience that I've learned about throughout my program at the Center for Applied Neuroscience is just that. It explains exactly how and what is happening in the brain through all these processes. And even though the medication affects your brain at a certain level to help cope with some of the imbalances that are chemically usually the causation, it's not always the case. Sometimes it is just a chemical imbalance. Like that was a struggle that I had. Is I didn't feel like I had a reason to be have anxiety or depression. A lot of times people, or there would be the stigma that it is always related to trauma, and it often is, because trauma incites that kind of response in your brain to cope and survive, to get past it, to get through it. But there's so much more underneath and in layers, and I think again it kind of comes back to what we expect from medication. And I think we need to not expect that it's a lifelong fix, that it's like temporary, momentary, and it's only a piece of the puzzle in terms of developing a recovery plan that's going to work for you. It has to be something that you're able to maintain. That being said, if you become, you gain more and more agency throughout your own recovery because you're doing the work that it takes, the personal development, the looking inward, learning to be alone with yourself and have a relationship with yourself and what that looks like. If you don't know how to do that, the medication, it's not going to be able to do that on its own. The medication can't do that work for you. It just allows you to be able to do it. So that is kind of where I see it, like the relationship between the two things in recovery is like you have to do the personal development, but sometimes you need the medication to be able to do that. If I was to try to do the personal recovery and that work on my own without medication, I would have never succeeded.
Okay.
In my personal opinion, like I said.
No, I totally can understand that, because I was just thinking in my own, within my own family, that there's certain aunts and stuff who had this problem, and for them even to start treading down this path of recovery, the medication was needed, as in it's helping for right now at this exact moment. But if you want an everlasting, long, full recovery, you have to do some internal searching and some internal work while getting this medication. Otherwise, it's not going to, it may go, but just like it went, it could possibly come back.
Yeah. Think about it like the medication is like putting gas in your car, but you're still the driver. Like the gas isn't going to take you anywhere if you don't drive the car. So you still are in control and you still have to do those things. But, if you don't have the fuel to be able to do it, you don't have the clarity to be able to do it, you're not able to do that work. So, I do, I'm also a big advocate for using natural processes as much as possible. And I think that's why I think the most, illuminating research that I've seen throughout my studies is how meditation and mindfulness affect the brain, and how those, ancient tools and skills have been related and put in the context of supporting people with mental health, specifically depression. And since depression is such a huge, has such a huge affect on people right now, because, this is a global situation. We're all going through this together. Everyone has different experiences, but it's the first time in history, that the entire world is feeling this all at the same time, regardless of culture, regardless of nationality, regardless of where you live, what you're doing. Everyone is alerted about, what's going on and how to protect ourselves. So it's kind of put another bag of rocks on our back and on top of everything else, because anxiety is literally just unnecessary worry.
Yeah, no.
So
No, sorry. But when you said that, I remember you even saying that, like, you kind of like had this curiosity, as in, like, how are people going on, like, not worrying or not caring or anything like this. I remember with the past relationship, she like had very bad, very like heavy anxiety. I didn't understand it. I was like, why are you, what's the problem? Like, why are you freaking out so much? Why are you flipping out? And then we separated, whatever. And then later on, I feel like, just like how the universe works, God, however you want to call it, all of a sudden I started getting like anxiety problems. And then I was like, whoa, okay, this is actually a thing. And this feeling, and like sometimes like no one will understand, but it's like within yourself. And then when you sort of like walk in your own shoes, like you said, and you like really know what it's like, then you see the need or the necessity for being able to cope with this and be able to get past it.
Yeah, and I think, like, I've had this conversation with a lot of, people that I've reached out to and have reached out to me throughout this, because they know that, I'm someone that they can talk to about it, because I'm very open about it myself. But yeah, a lot of people who didn't understand or experience or really weren't aware of mental health issues are starting to experience them themselves. And, that's just, I think that kind of hits home that like this can happen to anyone. It could be situational, it could be chronic, but either way, you have the ability to have agency over it, where originally we thought that we couldn't change certain things about our brain. And I think that's what's so cool about meditation and mindfulness is,
so that's actually what I wanted to ask you, because you did meditation and mindfulness.
Yeah.
So I want to say, with the research you've done, and also with the scientific research and like whatever they've recommended in the century and the times we're in now, how beneficial have you found out through these ancient tools like mindfulness and meditation to be beneficial for mental health?
They are absolutely the cornerstone. Anytime I talk about it with anyone else, it's actually one doctor is actually, his name is Zindel Segal, and he and his researchers have kind of put it together. They took the practices of mindfulness and meditation, which have, you can use them as a tool, just the same as yoga. Like that's also very ancient, and we've kind of westernized it. The same with meditation. We've kind of westernized it a little bit, because we want the benefits without the lifelong practice. So like yogis and people who have been meditating for, they see major differences in brain scans in terms of, neuroplasticity and your ability to learn and your ability to manage stress. Has completely changed the anatomy of their brain in terms of, what areas of your brain are growing and are communicating when it comes to stress. Like it basically helps you with your own response to stress. So when you think about that in a mental health context, they kind of took the scientific, like tangible results that they could see from meditation. Some people meditate for the feeling of enlightenment, or, being able to be more in tune with the universe and, a lot of really heightened awareness, kind of purposes, but it can also be used as a way to help. Remember before I spoke about, we try to get people well, and we get people well and then we kind of forget about them. And then obviously they relapse, right? Because depression and anxiety, it's episodic. It comes in waves. It comes and goes depending on, what's going on in your life at that time. Are you, experiencing hardships? Even if you do recover, it's not guaranteed that it's not going to happen again. So what they discovered is through this research, practicing tools, and I think they did like a 6-week study where they did workshops with all of these different patients, and did a longitudinal study where they found that, by teaching them these tools, which really turns out to be kind of like a way of life. If you're being mindful, you learn how to practice mindfulness. You don't necessarily have to set aside this hour of meditation to be able to get the results that you're looking for. But the more that you practice it, the more that you see the benefits and see the results. And people with depression are noticing that they're having less relapses. And even when they do begin to like spiral into that, like negative realm, they're much more able to cope and bounce back quickly than spiraling and funneling all the way down to the bottom and having to start from scratch again. So in terms of being able to stay well, meditation and mindfulness are probably the cornerstone of being able to do that, because it's a way of life. It's a way of thinking. You're training your brain to not engage in the stress response as much as you're used to.
So then you say that, like, instead of, sorry, but it just made me think, I didn't want to lose my train of thought, as in,
no problem.
Because, you said, so say someone who's trying to start beginning this, path of recovery and start to cope with their mental health, instead of trying to say just all of a sudden meditate for like an hour or 2 hours and try to do this and then overwhelm themselves and then not do anything for 2 to 3 days. Rather, say if they just started 2 minutes, just meditate 2 minutes a day and then do that for a month and then slowly build on that would be more beneficial because there's the consistency in doing it.
Absolutely. And that it goes along too with the science of like habit building. We're not really motivated to do things that are really hard, even if there's a big benefit at the end. So if you were going to tell like a group of people who are experiencing mental health, like, you can do this for an hour a day and it's going to, change your life. They're going to be like, no. even if the result's going to be amazing. It just, habit building, you can't jump in and expect results. You have to practice it. And the thing that helped me, because I just brand new, just last year started meditating, and I was, the first naysayer to be like, there's no way I can A, sit there quietly, and B, not have internal thoughts continuously working. And that's just something that I've learned to manage. But the process of starting to meditate can be as simple and as easy as just having mindful minutes. And you can do that with, the best time to do that is actually all you're doing is really being present in the moment and taking in all of the sensory aspects of what you're doing. So for instance, one of my colleagues that she does really great mindful minutes, she would just use a coffee or a glass of water. And it's as simple as, you might be drinking your tea or coffee in the morning or whatever you like to drink in the morning. And you can really just use your senses to be present in that moment instead of thinking about other things while you're doing it. Right? It's almost like you mindlessly eat, you mindlessly watch TV, you mindlessly check your phone. But if you're drinking your coffee and, you're smelling it, kind of like paying close attention to the notes, the different smells. I really love like the bitterness of coffee. So I love smelling it in the morning. The temperature, like being able to tangibly feel that, or even like anything that's on the glass that's raised that you can actually feel with your fingers. And then, the process of tasting it and enjoying it and how you feel. And you can do all of that. It sounds like so much work, but you can do all of that in 2 minutes.
So what would you say would be those components of a mindful minute?
Just using your senses. The easiest thing with understanding meditation is you're going to have tons of thoughts. There's going to be tons of noise. It's going to be like this the whole time. Always, like, what do I need to do today? Oh, I need to brush my teeth. Oh, oh, I need to check my phone. Oh, I need to message this person. It's constantly going to come up because we're so used to doing that. That's just the, the stream of consciousness that we have because we're so used to being so busy. It's actually the process of slowing down and intentionally being in that moment. And even though there's going to be, birds chirping, thoughts running by, you just dismiss them for the moment. And just observe what you're doing in that moment. So a nice analogy is, you're on the side of the highway and you're just watching cars go by. The cars are your thoughts. You don't have to get in and go on that drive with that thought. If you're thinking, I slept in today, I'm lazy. That's a thought. It can continue going. You don't have to jump on board and be like, I'm going to ride that thought until the wheels fall off. And I hate myself for being lazy. Instead, just watch that and be like, okay, that's a thought that I have. All the thoughts that I have aren't facts. They're just thoughts, right? We kind of put ourselves in this, passenger seat that we're the passenger of our brain. We're just here and it's controlling us. But that's not really the case. It's going to create all of this noise and ideas. It's trying to process things, but you need to learn, just like flexing a muscle, that even though those thoughts are trying to distract you, coming back to the moment is like doing a rep. It's like lifting a weight once. Every time you drift off to another thought and you come back, that's another rep. So just like building a muscle, you have to kind of build that mental strength and resilience to be able to practice on being in the moment. And that's all that meditation is. Obviously, you can dig deeper, and the more comfortable you get, you experience different body sensations and focus on different body sensations. But for just the person who wants to start meditating and see how it feels, start with just doing it while you're eating, mindful drinking. There's tons of guided meditations. Breath awareness is where I would start because you're always breathing. You can always come back to your breath and center there. But the result of meditation from start to beginning is you start talking, really, really fast. Or if you are moving really, really fast and you're not able to slow down, usually our stress threshold is up to here. So it's really hard to get down and peel away all the stress that we've kind of been holding on to for so long and haven't released. But the more you meditate, the more you're able to kind of get down to your actual base mode of not being stressed and not feeling stressed, because the process of meditation shunts your nervous system into relax mode. With the rest and digest, we're always in fight and flight. So if you're really anxious all the time, you're constantly, feeling worried, feeling like the next thing that happens is going to be the straw that breaks the camel's back. But by meditating, what you're doing is you're teaching yourself not to react to the stressful triggers, and training your body to learn to relax in moments of stress. So by practicing it over time, you're going to be able to call on it as a skill when you actually are really stressed out, and use it in a way that is going to help you control your stress level at that time in a physical way.
No, that's huge, beneficial knowledge, is in gold, not even a golden nugget. It's like a golden boulder.
Yeah.
What would help someone in recovery. And in the terms of meditation, I had someone come and speak. He was from India. He just wrote a book on meditation, and he said, especially for the times we're in now, meditation would be needed to be done in a whole different way compared to how people were before. And like how you said, it's so easy, or these thoughts keep coming in our mind. Like if I had asked you to close your eyes and picture a dumpster and have all your thoughts go in the dumpster, how many thoughts would go across in your mind? Where if I just said close your eyes and imagine a polar bear and just focus on the polar bear, it'd be a lot, we'd be able to focus on a polar bear and just think about that a lot easier than it would be to think of nothing and having all our thoughts disappear.
Yeah. The other thing that's interesting too, when you mentioned like polar bear, is, if I tell you not to think about a polar bear, what do? You think about a polar bear. Like you can't help it, right? So that's kind of the reaction a lot of people have to meditation is they're like, okay, try to quiet your thoughts. And they're like, but I have so many thoughts. Like the second you say quiet your thoughts, it's like impossible to do. But it's a practice, which means like there is no end. Like a lot of people think, okay, I'm going to get to a point where like I'm really good at meditating and then I'm not going to have to try so hard. No, that's not it. It's a lifelong skill that you can continue to develop, because what you're really developing is your own intuition about your body and how you're reacting to things and how you're thinking. So that work's never done, right? Like you can always learn, you can always build on it. And that's really interesting that this person that you spoke to before mentioned how we have to practice it differently. It's absolutely right. Like we can compare ourselves to yogis and monks who've been meditating, they're 70 years old and they're going to live until they're 106 because, they haven't stressed their body out to the point of sickness and illness, which is really what we do. So meditation has a lot of physical benefits as well that, we usually think of just in the mind sense, but physically meditation, it decreases the inflammation in your body. It decreases all of the free radicals that are running around, things that are, foreign things in your body, really don't have a purpose. They're just kind of there to wreak havoc. And you physically see changes in your energy and how you distribute that energy. Do we distribute that energy and put all of our mind into all of these, distracting thoughts that have no organization, that are just kind of running around free in our minds, like rent free all the time? Or, do you want to kind of like curate what it is that you think about and how you think about certain things, so that the next time that something happens to you, like, it could be something as simple as, oh, I forgot this person's name. That's a moment of anxiety that I think everyone can appreciate. But, you go into that, like, if you have anxiety, you go home and you think about it for hours. I didn't remember their name. They're going to think I don't think they're important. They're going to think I'm disrespectful. They're going to, like all of these negative things that we just fill our mind with, that is a story that we completely created, and all based on how we felt in that moment. So you spend hours going over something that, if you just accept it in that moment, oh, hey, listen, I'm so distracted right now. I totally forgot your name. What's your name? We could have kind of taken the power away from that situation. Or even later thinking about it, just say, oh, I forgot their name. Next time I won't, though, because now I remember it. Instead of going into this cycle of, this self-loathing, like I made a mistake and I need to punish myself for it now. But it's just a way of thinking and reacting to things that, if you are aware of your triggers, you can start practicing it. It's almost kind of like an immersion therapy where you can visualize, like you said, you can visualize putting all of your thoughts into this trash bin that you don't need. Like accept that you have them, but be like, I'm not going to give you any power. And I think that is really where it becomes a tool in our society to help people who are, struggling with this daily anxiety or depression, or feeling that they don't have agency over a mental illness, or, it doesn't even have to be a mental illness. It can just be a bout, of depression, or a season of depression, or, anxiety caused by, some situation or social situation. It doesn't have to be chronic. Like everyone can use these as tools. And I think it will help create a better environment in terms of our society, where the more people that practice, the more people understand that, we can be a little bit more humanistic in the way we treat ourselves and the way we treat other people.
And come from a place of compassion and understanding, rather than just assuming things and making things all the more worse.
Exactly. Like, for instance, like we make assumptions all the time, but our brain is wired to do that. So we have to unlearn some of these assumptions that, they're just snap judgments that, over time, our experiences, they see patterns. And so we have snap judgments. It's just the way, it's almost like we're, Windows XP operating in 2020, like, can't Windows 98 needs an upgrade. So it's like we have this old hardware that evolution hasn't caught up with yet, and so we're having to deal with the hardware that we have, which sometimes doesn't work the way intuitively we think it should, but our evolution just hasn't caught up with our cognitive changes that we've had and our lifestyle changes that we've had. We've had so much development that, over such a short period of time, our brains haven't really caught up to the changes that we've made in our lifestyle. So we're still struggling with this, Homo sapien brain that isn't equipped to deal with the stresses that we put it under in our daily life now, which is why mindfulness is so important, because it really just brings you back to just your relationship with yourself, looking inward, understanding like some of your motivators, some of your triggers, just being more aware of how you feel in certain situations. And like you said, that builds self-compassion, and therefore it builds compassion for others, so that when you have these snap judgments, like, oh, this person slept in today, they're lazy, or this person is late, they probably don't think my time is as important as theirs is. It's like, no, you know what, maybe they're having a bad day. Maybe something happened and I just need to be compassionate with them right now. Like, give people the benefit of the doubt and treat them the way that you would want to be treated in that moment. And I think because you're doing a lot of that work inward and looking inward for how you can treat yourself with that compassion, it becomes more natural to share that with other people.
Yeah, and then in that sense, like, it's like your inward is your outward, like the way you interact and the way you are outwardly to the environment and the people around you, that's going to be a direct reflection of your inward. So the more cognizant you are and the more aware you are, and like the slowly you start to build that mindfulness and that awareness, then the slowly you start to build a better life within yourself as well. So
Absolutely.
as in action items, like if someone wanted to, start treading this path and really sort of making a change, what would you say would be like some like key takeaways as like 2021 is approaching, and to get the year off right?
I think what you said is really important. I'll just touch on that before I answer. Is we do need to see other people as mirrors. Like, they mirror our behavior, and sometimes we project onto other people things that we're feeling, and being able to discern the difference, it takes a lot of looking inward to see, okay, I'm angry at someone for being late. Is that because that's a judgment I have of myself? Like, I won't be late because I don't want other people to think that way. Like, the judgment that you have on other people is really like a good mirror for what you don't like about yourself, or what you might be struggling with. So I think the most important thing I can suggest for anyone when you start trying to move forward on this path of recovery and self-discovery is you have to be honest with yourself. And sometimes that's really hard. And I think it's happening a lot more frequently now because people are isolated. They're alone with themselves. And before, we were able to be distracted. We'd fill our day with things that would distract us from being alone with ourselves and actually trying to cultivate a relationship with ourselves. And now we're kind of left alone, quiet, with only our thoughts and only ourself as support. And we're finally having to be honest about how we feel. And that can be scary, because if you're sitting alone for the first time, realizing like, I am really unhappy, or I am really stressed, or I feel really anxious and nervous, and I'm not really sure what to do with my time alone. These are things that, when you're trying to avoid, when you start to realize that, you really, really struggle, because they're all skills that you have to put the work in to kind of figure it out. But it starts with being honest. If you're not honest with yourself about how you're feeling, you don't have any choices. The second you're honest and you realize, like, I need help, or I need support, or I need to make a change, that's when you start to have choices. That exact moment is, if the second you say, okay, I'm not feeling well, I need to do something about it. Okay, what are your options? Okay, then you see, okay, I can call a doctor, I can call someone who is, supportive, someone I trust. But all of those options don't come into play until you're very honest with yourself about what needs to happen next, or what isn't working. Once you do that, you have a lot of choices. It just really is like looking in the mirror and deciding, okay, am I the person I want to be? Am I living the way I want to spend my life? Do I feel fulfilled? Do I think I can contribute more? And we're the only people holding ourselves back. Obviously, there's tons of barriers that you have to overcome throughout your life, but you're your first barrier. You have to decide, are you going to look in the mirror and be honest with yourself about what's going on and what needs to change? The second you do that, you have endless opportunities and possibilities.
Well, you said two really important things, and I touched on. Actually, 2 days ago, I did every Wednesday, I do this thing called Whiteboard Wednesdays, and I was touching on some of the points in Brian Tracy's book, Change Your Thinking, Change Your Life. Mm-hmm. And it's like the moment you make the concrete decision to change your life, you can do it. And the second you tell yourself you can't do something, you just put that limitation on yourself and the inability to not be able to do that. So with three things now I wanted to ask, or sort of say, is coming towards the end, is there something you want to sort of tell yourself and sort of speak into existence? Like, say you're watching this video a year from now and sort of, tell yourself, and then the next thing was to offer you, actually, because I know it's deep in my audience, as maybe you, as well as your own, but doing a part 2 to this, but doing a live show. That way there could be maybe some few Q&As and people could really benefit, and then they can find a better and deeper way of getting in touch with you, as well as if you can share all your social handles and how they can connect with you, and if they wanted to reach out with you.
I would love that. I think I forget your first question already.
Sorry, was just sort of something you want to tell yourself and speak into existence?
Okay, like manifest. What I want to manifest. So many things. My favorite part of manifesting is imagining myself in that situation. The thing that I have been trying to manifest for the last year is I would love, and it's interesting that you mentioned you spoke to someone who's done a TED Talk, but that's like one of my dreams, is to do a TED Talk. So I don't know if I will accomplish it by next year, but it's certainly like how I see the growth and continuing to reach out to people. I just have a huge belief that healthcare and being able to care for yourself is like a universal right that we all have, and the fact that there are barriers to that, I want to help to try to break them down, because I don't think that you should have to be privileged to get care. And speaking and being open about my own experiences and journey, I think I hope that it helps other people start or maintain or continue on with their own. And the more open and compassionate we are with ourselves, in the public realm, I think the more people learn to be compassionate with themselves. So I hope that I can continue to kind of inspire that self-compassion and that authenticity, in terms of the way I share myself with the public. And I just hope that can help continue to propel other people to do the same, so that more people can experience what I've experienced, and being able to recover. I mean, it's a lifelong journey, but that's kind of the biggest take home, is I want people to know that they can do it, and that there are tools and tons of opportunities to grow out there, and you just need to reach for it. Yeah. And sorry, go ahead.
No, that's I guess not funny, but that's it's crazy how the world works sometimes. I spoke to maybe about at least 10 or 11 people who gave TED Talks, and I was curious myself. There's a way where someone can nominate you, so you never know what could happen.
Yeah.
You never even know who will see this video.
Mm-hmm.
So, okay.
Yeah.
The next thing, what I usually have the guests do is 2 truths and 1 lie. So you have to tell me any 2 truths and any lie, and I have to guess the lie.
Okay. 2 truths. And 1 lie. Make sure I do them in a different order. I am. I'm a female rugby player. I've won 2 national championships, so that's one for the book. I love to travel. Can't wait until the restrictions reopen. And I struggle with reading.
The lie is you struggle with reading?
Yeah.
Because I was really just trying to think about it, and I was like, okay, which one would it be? But that's cool you play rugby, because even though I'm here in the States, my family's from Sri Lanka, so I'm familiar with rugby and like the New Zealand All Blacks and things like that.
Yeah. It's that part of the world, like South Africa, Sri Lanka, New Zealand, Australia, they're all rugby crazy. This part is like getting there, but yeah, I usually say that because people have a stigma associated with like female athletes, especially rugby, because it can be such a tough sport. But I love kind of bringing that to attention, because I think it's just such an empowering sport, and it's super fun and entertaining and competitive.
No, so everything you're doing and everything you have been is amazing, and like especially the work that you are passionate about, because it's going to help so many people. And I really do appreciate your time and like giving a more realistic and a more like knowledgeable insight that's not just like hearsay. It's sort of like fact. So I appreciate that. And then
physically, mentally, spiritually, financially, consistently.